Well, good evening, everybody. Appreciate y'all coming on. So I was telling Mitchell, I said, I'm really surprised when I saw the copyright date on here. I thought, I can't believe it. I did this 20 years ago. um, so what the name of the program is called The Birds and Bees of Wildflowers. And I had written it up for Tremont in the Smokies. It was back when they used to have the hiking weeks, and they would have several different programs. And so I wrote this up and I called it Pollination Strategies, and nobody came. So I said, okay, I'll change the name, spice it up a little bit. So when I changed it to the Birds and Bees, it worked. So people started coming. Um,
So, Kris, if I could please, let me take a moment to give you a proper introduction
okay.
and then we'll proceed, okay?
All right.
Give me just a second here. So, just wanted to let everyone know that Kris is an accomplished educator and a naturalist from East Tennessee, and she has been teaching environmental science at Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the American Museum of Science and Energy in Oak Ridge for over 36 years. She has a passion for science and nature education that shines through her work and is involved in many community efforts. Kris enjoys leading wildflower hikes in the state parks, the UT Arboretum in Oak Ridge, and other locations across East Tennessee. And she is a highly regarded speaker who delivers an informative presentations on the topic of wildflowers. Uh, Kris is also involved in other activities in support of wildflowers and native plants. 7 years ago, she founded a Facebook group entitled Wildflowers, What's Blooming in Tennessee, and that has grown to over 4,500 members over time. And I can personally vouch for that particular Facebook group. I find it extremely useful because if I'm thinking about going to see some wildflower, chances are there's somebody who's posted that wildflower and tells where the location is, and I can go and find it blooming rather than going and being in a hit or miss situation. So thank you, Kris, for making that available to all of us. Uh, they also serve as a platform for exchanging information and sharing photos from sightings all across the state. And one can join that group by answering a few questions during the sign up. Another resource that she's created that you'll find very useful is a website called easttennessee.wildflowers.com. And this is a valuable reference for wildflower enthusiasts. It showcases over 700 species of wildflowers that Kris has photographed both in Tennessee and elsewhere that she has visited with her husband over time. So she brings a lot of experience with her, and I know you're going to enjoy this presentation. So, Kris, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and you may begin.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I'll go ahead and okay, this is that website if anybody wants to write that down. I says, too bad we don't live in a shorter name state, like Ohio or Iowa, because Tennessee's pretty long. But yeah, I've got over 9,000 pictures on that. It's not all just wildflowers. I've got different countries that we've been to, and a whole lot of different things. So um, so this is what, if you get on that, what you do is you get where it says search all galleries in lime green up there in the corner. If you click on that link, you'll find the different galleries, and I have sub galleries. The first one's going to be wildflowers from Tennessee, and they're done by season, if they bloom along the roadsides or in the woods, or and by color. So it makes it real easy to find things if you are not familiar with the wildflowers. So I'm being sarcastic with this, okay? My warning. This program discusses the reproduction of wildflowers, and some subjects may be upsetting to sensitive people. Wink, wink. Okay, the reason I'm saying this is because you will be seeing parts of flowers for their reproductive parts. Um, and down there by the little smiley face, I've got pumpkin book. One of my friends has a daughter that teaches first grade down in Wilson County. And apparently the Mothers of Freedom came into the classroom and they were checking out the books. And they wanted to ban the book about pumpkins. And I said, what in the world could have been offensive about pumpkins? And she said, well, when they saw that the bees take the pollen from the male flower to the female flower, that was too much. That's called pollination. We wouldn't have pumpkins if we didn't have that. So I hope nobody gets offended by seeing these. All right, so I'm going to talk about the different parts of the flowers. So this would be an example of a perfect flower. It's got both male and female parts. So you can see the anthers, those are the male parts. This is the part that makes the pollen. And the pistil is the female part. And that is going to be connected to the ovary where the seeds are made. So this, have any of y'all ever seen false aloe plants? It's a wildflower we have here. It grows in other places too. But the reason I like this picture is because there's no petals to get in the way. So you can see the pistil is the entire part. So the top part is called the stigma, which is the very up here. That's the stigma. That's the sticky part where the pollen sticks to it. And then that pollen will grow a tube down the style, which then is connected to the ovary. And so the DNA from that pollen is going to go down that tube and it goes down to the ovary, and this is where the seeds are made. So the anthers are the parts that make the pollen. So anytime you see now that you see these yellow dots, those will be big pollen grains. Okay, so and you're going to see this bee a lot too. So when she flies from one flower to the other, the pollen is going to go on that sticky stigma. It's going to grow a tube down the style and to the ovary. So the DNA is actually in the sperm that's in that pollen grain. And when fertilization occurs, this is when you will get seeds. Oh, have y'all ever cut an apple in the middle like this instead of cutting it up and down? If you cut one this way, you'll actually see a star in it. And all of those 5 parts are the parts that will have, those are the where the ovules are. And when those are fertilized, you'll get your seeds and then the fruit will develop. Okay, so most plants do not want to fertilize themselves. So they will have their anthers and their pistils will develop at as different times. So on this picture here, the spring beauty, the one on the left has the anthers have already they've already matured and they've shrunk, and you can see the pistil. The one on the right, you can see that the anthers are up and the pistil is still closed. So those flowers cannot pollinate themselves. And then here, you're going to see it says eat it, Jules. So the petals are kind of like, I call them McDonald's signs. They're attention getters. So on that jewel weed, those bright yellow flat petals get the attention. Let's say, but you go to McDonald's and then you get in there and you don't know where to go to get the food. So there might be little lines on the floor that take you to the counter where you can order your food. If you see the little orange dots in the jewel weed, the trumpet creeper's got the stripes in it. The bluet has the yellow, and the flame azaleas, most azaleas will have one petal that has either a solid color or it's going to have spots on it. So these are called nectar guides, and they get the attention of the pollinator of where to go to find the nectar. So I like to call them road maps that show the pollinators where to go. So here's our butterfly. It's going to go to the petal with the nectar guide. Okay. You don't have mountain laurel in Middle Tennessee, do you? It probably only goes as far as about the Cumberland Plateau. Or does anybody?
Yeah, I think we do have it, like you say, on the Cumberland Plateau. I
Yeah,
can't say for certain that it's beyond that, but it does go at least that far into
yeah, yeah.
Tennessee.
I know it's that far. I just didn't know if it went any further. But this is one of my favorite spring wildflowers. It's so pretty. Um, if you notice, the stamens are tucked into little pockets. So when you look at the buds, you see the little things sticking out on the sides. That's where those stamens are. All right. And they're kind of spring loaded. So what happens is when a bee lands on this, it pops up and it throws pollen on her. And if you see that red ring in the middle, that's the nectar guide. So the bee knows where to go to get to the nectar. Um, and if you see the in the very middle, there's that little yellow dot that's connected to the pistil. So when she flies to the next flower on another plant, she's going to carry the pollen and it will cross pollinate it. But one thing that's interesting about mountain laurel is every part of that plant is poisonous, including the nectar. So the old mountain people, before they would eat honey, they would feed it to their dog to make sure that it wasn't poisonous. Because I know it's horrible, but um, the even the nectar is poisonous. So, yeah, like I said, every part of it is poisonous. But they're so pretty. And there's the pistil. Okay, this is a morning glory, and it was backlit, and you can really see the nectar guides in here. How it just would draw in a pollinator. So this picture I took at the UT Gardens in Knoxville, and I just loved it because that bee is completely covered in pollen. I mean, she's really doing a good job. Um, so pollinators will spread pollen from one flower to another, and preferably on a different plant. So the bees are going to take that pollen back to the hive. They also take back nectar, and the nectar will become honey. So they take this back to the hive. Their larvae eat the pollen because pollen is really high in protein. Um, and I've always had fun with the guys in some of my classes, especially back when the starter jackets were popular. The boys would come strutting in with their starter jackets on that had the Charlotte Hornets on it. And I say, "Did you know your mascot's a girl?" And they go, "No, it ain't." And I said, "Does it sting?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, it's a girl because only the she, bees, wasps, and ants can sting." And that would just tear those boys up. But some of the other pollinators, we always think about honeybees being the pollinators, but other ones are wasps, ant, beetles, butterflies, moths, bats, hummingbirds, and the wind. And we'll talk about the wind in a little bit. Okay. I thought this was pretty interesting. I just recently found this slide, and so I wanted to put that on there. Your smaller insects are not going to have as far of a range that they're going to fly. So you can see that the little green sweat bee only goes about 500 feet, but your monarch butterfly can go as far as 150 miles. So the bigger your insect, the wider range it has. So honeybees and bumblebees are really good pollinators because their bodies are very, very hairy. And a lot of times pollen is sticky. And so, flower pollen is sticky, so it will stick to their bodies. You can see the honeybee's mouth part, the proboscis on there. So they've got that long mouth part that they can use to suck up the nectar. And when they suck that nectar up, it goes into a special place called a honey stomach, and when I talk to my students about that, they go, so when they fly back to the hive, they regurgitate that. And the kids just think that's horrible. They go, "Oh, you mean I'm eating bee vomit?" I said, "No, no." Um, but you can see the bumblebee down here is drinking nectar. Do any of y'all have milkweed in your yard? Okay, if you look at milkweed, especially at night, you shine a flashlight down into it, you see a bunch of nectar. It looks like it's got water in it, but it's actually nectar. Um, you can see on the bumblebee, especially the pollen basket. So bumblebees and honeybees have these pollen baskets. So they will brush that pollen onto that back leg. And when they get back to the hive, that is removed, and they store that in the honey in the combs. So let's see, I just talked about that. So you can see that they've got those really long proboscis. You're going to see another picture of a bumblebee and really see her proboscis. So it takes about 1,500 trips for flowers to flowers for a honeybee to go back and forth to fill with enough nectar to fill a teaspoon. So it's a lot of work, and then about half of that water has to evaporate before it will become honey. So this is something I just recently found out about, and I thought it was fascinating that honeybees have a positive charge, an electrical charge, and the pollen in the flowers has a negative charge. And so if you know about electricity, positive and negative attract. It's kind of like north and south on a magnet attract. So when the bee flies over the flower, sometimes that pollen will actually rise up and jump onto it. So I thought that was really fascinating. Um, so once the bee enters the electrical field, the flower sometimes will release even more scent to attract it. So did y'all know that? No, I thought it was really exciting when I found that out. Um, okay, yeah, this is a really cool picture with that bumblebees proboscis. Bumblebees are really, really smart, and they're lazy. So what they'll do, what she's getting ready to do, is to pierce that flower. She's going to pierce that spur on that larkspur and steal the nectar. So she's not going to go up into the flower to get to the nectar. Um, do any of you have garden phlox in your yard? If you got phlox, watch the bumblebees, because what they'll do is they'll bypass the top part of the flower. They'll go up to the stem of the flower, and they'll pierce it, and they steal the nectar. So that doesn't help the flower at all, because they don't pollinate it. Bumblebees can also do something called buzz pollination, where they vibrate their body real hard, and that will throw the pollen on their body. So then when they fly to the next flower, they can pass the flower or the pollen on. And one of the flowers that they do that on is our tomato plants. Okay, so like I said, they're pretty smart. Here you can see this bumblebee. I took this picture up in the Smokies. So this is called closed gentian, and the petals are real tight. It can be opened up, but it takes a really large insect like a bumblebee, and you can see she's working her way down in there. And she said, there's got to be a way in here. So she's working her way down in there. Um, and here's one of those pumpkin flowers. Actually, this is a squash, but squash plants have either female flowers or male flowers. So they're on separate plants. So the bee has to go to the male flower to get the pollen, and then when she flies to the next flower, she'll pass that pollen on. And that's how we get our pumpkins and melons and watermelons. So here is a picture that I took of this bumblebee, and you can see where she's stealing the nectar. So she pierces the stem of the flower and drinks that nectar out of it. And then this one, she's actually going in upside down. So I said, whatever works. That's that pink turtle head that we have up at the Smokies. And oh, I hope this is going to work. I forgot to check this. This is called Filmy Angelica, that lives up in the Smokies. And it's kind of like Queen Anne's lace on steroids. They're huge. Oh, I should have checked this. I'm sorry. Sometimes my videos die, and it did. But anyway, what happens is this got a narcotic nectar in it. And so these bees just kind of walk around. I mean, like they're stoned. And one of these bees actually falls down underneath one of the flowers, but the narcotic nectar gets them drunk, and that keeps them on the flower longer. And so they're drinking this nectar and they're stumbling around on the plant, and so they're able to pollinate it that way. So it's kind of funny to watch. Okay, so butterflies are another pollinator. They're not quite as good because they're not real hairy, but you can see the top picture there. That butterfly that was taken at our science camp a few years ago, and one of the kids had spilled juice on the table, so the butterfly's drinking that juice. But the reason I like this picture is because you can see its mouth is in two parts. So when a butterfly comes out of its chrysalis, its mouth is in two parts, and it uses the palps to push it together. So their mouth is hollow. And you know those things that kids blow at a birthday party? It's coiled up and they blow it and it comes out. That's what their mouth is like. So when they land on a flower, that mouth will come out and they'll drink the nectar. Um, so one time I asked the kids, I said, "How do you think a butterfly tastes?" And this kid goes, "Probably pretty bad." And I said, "Let me rephrase that. What part of the butterfly's body do you think they used to taste with?" What do y'all think? You can unmute.
Feet.
Their feet, exactly. So it makes sense. When they land on a flower, their taste receptors are in their feet. So they land on the flower, they taste that nectar, then the mouth part comes out. So yeah, he said probably pretty bad. So their taste receptors, like I said, are in their feet. The picture on the bottom is a painted lady, and you can see where that mouth part's coming down and drinking the nectar out of the white clover. And I'm going to tell you something about clover a little bit later. Okay, so moths are also good pollinators. Most of them fly at night, but there are some that fly in the daytime. I'm sure most of you have probably have seen the snowberry clearwing, the one that looks like a bumblebee. Um, so the one up the yellow-collared scape moth at the top, I've only seen them during the daytime. But nighttime blooming flowers are usually yellow or white because they've got to show up under starlight and moonlight. So here's our hummingbird. They're going to be pollinators for red and orange tube-shaped flowers. That picture of that female hummingbird sitting up there, I love this picture because it was backlit and you can see her mouth, see her tongue. So it shows you how long the brown part is her beak and then the white part is her tongue. So that shows you how they're able to get down into flowers. And I learned a few years ago that their tongue at the end is actually forked. So that helps them to be able to get more nectar. They will eat little insects that they can find in the flowers, and they can actually catch insects in the air if they have to. So like I said, they like red and orange tube-shaped flowers. So the cardinal flower is a really good one. That's blooming right now. Okay, so ants, you'll sometimes see ants on the flowers. And this one is kind of doing a bumblebee trick. It's stealing the nectar out of the jewelweed. Do you have hearts of busting in your area? The strawberry plant? Okay. This is most people have never seen the flowers. They just don't, they're not that noticeable. But they bloom in around April or May. The only thing I have ever seen on these flowers are ants. So I'm assuming that ants are the pollinators for the hearts of busting. Now is the time of the year that they're popping open and their seeds hang down. And then this is vetch. This is kind of a non-native plant, but you see it a lot of times along the roadsides. This has what we call an extra floral nectary, which means the nectary is not in the flower itself. And if you can see where the ants are, there's a little black cup, and the plant produces the nectar there, and the ants will go to that and drink it. If they come across an insect egg, or like say a small caterpillar, they will eat those. So the plant wants the ants to be on there. So plants and animals have ways of communicating with each other that is kind of invisible to us. So some of the other pollinators are going to be wasps and flies. Oh, I like that. You got mountain laurel. It's pretty. And beetles. Now, you know what bless your heart means if you're from the South. Bless their hearts, because poor beetles are not very smart. So beetles are intellectually challenged, and they have to go to flowers that they don't have to think about. They just land on it, walk around, drink the nectar, get the pollen, and go someplace else. They don't know to go down into certain flowers. So you'll always find them on flat flowers or bowl-shaped flowers. So this one, now we're going to get in wind. This is one that's blooming right now. Y'all have allergies? If you have hay fever, you know this one real well. Unfortunately, poor goldenrod is blooming at the same time, and it gets a bad rap. People see goldenrod, oh, that makes me so sick. It makes me sneeze. I said, no, it doesn't, because it's insect pollinated. This is what's bothering you, is ragweed. So if you look at this, the male flowers are on the top. And if you're upwind of it, you can flick it and it gives off millions of pollen grains. Don't be downwind. Okay. But if you flick it, it's going to give off a lot of pollen grains. The female flowers, so those are the male flowers. They're at the top part of the stalk. Down below those, you see the two little tiny white threads. Those are the female, those are the pistils. So I've always told my students that this is kind of like shotgun pollination. If you go to a football field and you've got a small target on the goal post at the other end, if you tried to shoot it with a rifle, unless you're a really good shot, you probably won't hit it. But if you shoot it with a shotgun, some of those pellets would hit that target. So this is kind of how this works. Your wind pollinated plants have to send out millions of pollen grains so that another one from another plant will hit it. Okay. So a lot of that pollen ends up in our nose, ends up in our eyes, and that's what gives us, if you're allergic to it, that's what makes you sneeze and your eyes water and makes you sick. So this is what we call a monoecious plant. Mono means one. So they have the male flowers on one part of the plant and the female flowers on another part. So that's why I've got it separated as male and female. Some of the other ones that are wind pollinated, of course, are grass. And you can see the pistils are white. They stick up. The anthers that produce the pollen hang down. This way, they're not as likely to pollinate themselves. So when the wind blows, the pollen is released and it will hit the pistils on another plant. So grass and corn, wheat flowers are so, and pine trees are ones, oak trees are wind pollinated. I didn't grow up on a farm, so I never really realized what corn, how it gets pollinated. But you know, the tassels at the top, those tassels have the pollen in it. When you clean corn, you are actually taking the pistils off. So the silks are the pistils. Every single grain of corn has one silk on it. Okay. Have you ever gotten corn that didn't get pollinated and it's all like shriveled up? Sometimes you'll actually get a twin. You'll get a little bitty one that the silks didn't come out the top, and you'll get this little shriveled up ear of corn. And that's why, is because it wasn't able to get pollinated. So your pine flowers, you're going to have the male flowers on one part of the tree, and then the female cones, which are the female flowers, on another one. So I'm going to release the pollen here. And what happens is that the way the female cone is shaped as like a spiral. It's actually uses Fibonacci numbers. And so when that spirals around, it just helps the pollen to get into where the ovules are. Okay, so this is milkweed. Do any of y'all have milkweed in your yard? This is really, really important if you want to have monarch butterflies. I've got milkweed, got several plants. The other day I counted 50 different monarch caterpillars. So this is going to be a really, really good year for them. This group of caterpillars, once they become butterflies, those butterflies will fly to Mexico and they'll spend the winter down there. So milkweed, if you want to help the monarchs, any kind of milkweed is really important. Don't get the tropical milkweed though. You want to get the native ones. So if you look at this honeybee real closely, can you see the little things on her feet? Okay, those are called pollinia, and orchids also have pollinia. So what happens, the little yellow things actually have the pollen grains in them. So they get caught on her feet. And when she flies to the next flower, if she can get it exactly the right way, it's really hard to do. But if they get exactly the right way put in there, it will pollinate the flower. So she's drinking nectar out of here, and she's gotten these pollinia on them. It took me 100 pictures to get this picture because they are very active. They don't stay still. So I finally caught her being still long enough that I could get those pollinia. So if the pollination occurs, this is what you'll get. Okay. And you could, there's only maybe 2 or 3 pods, sometimes 4 pods on a plant. So you can tell that not many of those flowers get pollinated. But if they do, look how many seeds you get. So it's full of seeds. And if you've got grandchildren, they love these to let the wind carry the seeds. And then this is what they look like close up. So the seeds are real flat. So it makes it easy for them to be carried in the wind. I love the passion flowers. This is a really good plant. It used to be Tennessee state flower until the 30s when they decided to make the iris our state flower. But now this is Tennessee state wildflower. But it's really interesting to watch these. It takes a really large insect like a bumblebee or some of the bigger wasp. I've seen those down in Florida. So as the bee walks under here, you can see where the anthers are. They're hitting her thorax. Okay. Now what's interesting is you see the ovary this time is above the anthers. Usually they're below. So this is what we call a superior ovary. The pistils, as you can see, are connected to the ovary. That's that round ball. And so as she walks around, she hits the when she flies to the next flower, she'll hit the pistils. That's those green things that you see sticking down. I'm sorry, I should have checked I forgot to check these videos, but this is about a minute. You can actually watch these passion flowers open up. It's really cool. It takes, this was a 30-minute time lapse, and I made it up to about a minute. And I apologize for not checking these, but you can actually watch it open up. And what's cool is you can watch the anthers flip over. So there's 5 anthers, and you'll see them flip. Just pretty interesting. Okay, now some flowers are able to pollinate themselves, and 2 of them are violets and dandelions. If you've got violets in your yard, if you've ever dug them up, this time of the year, you'll see these little pods on them. Those are what we call cleistogamous flowers. And they're not like the flower that you see here. It's just a pod. And they can pollinate themselves. Dandelions can also do that. And when I was a kid, oh, let me back up just a second. When you look at a dandelion, how many flowers do you see there? You see one?
A bunch.
Hundreds. Yeah, trick question. Yeah, every one of those petals that you see is connected to one flower. So every single one of those will get pollinated by that same flower. You can actually see the little pistils on there. So every one of those can make a seed. That's why you get so many dandelion seeds. But when I was a kid, I was probably in about third or fourth grade, we learned about pollination, and it was in the spring. And I got so excited when I went home that day. I thought, I'm going to pollinate some flowers. So I went around and tried to put pollen from dandelions into violets. Good thing it didn't work. That would have been a disaster. I didn't know that that wouldn't work. There's no way that would work because they're not related at all. But that was enough, a kid that knew just enough to be dangerous. So that would have made an awful weed because if they can pollinate themselves, it's bad. So the different colors will attract different pollinators. Honeybees cannot see red or orange. So they're red-orange colorblind. People go, yeah, well, they go to my zinnias. Okay, what's colors on the inside of your zinnias? Yellow. Okay, so it's going to be attracted to the yellow flowers on the inside. So I'm not going to read through all those, but you can see that they go to different pollinators go to different colors of flowers. Now, green is usually going to be like the wind is going to pollinate it. It's not going to get the attention of pollinators. Okay, there's no color to get their attention. But if it's a stinky flower, which I'm going to show you one in a minute, it will attract flies or beetles. Okay. You and I cannot see ultraviolet light, but bees and butterflies and birds, a lot of other animals are able to see ultraviolet light. So if they fly over a field with like daisies in it, it's going to look like neon lights in that field. So it really gets their attention. Maroon colored flowers, maroon or brown, they're always going to smell bad or funny. Okay. So they attract beetles and flies because it's like dead meat. And a lot of times it has a really bad smell to it. Okay, so this was a poster that we used to have at the Science Museum, and so I took a picture of it. The flowers on the top row were taken with an ultraviolet reflecting or ultraviolet light. It shows the ultraviolet reflectors in it. The bottom row are those same flowers the way you and I see it. So you can see where the nectar guides are. So honeybees and other insects are able to see those nectar guides. We can't see them. So your night blooming flowers like gypsum weed, I had to wait till 7:30 at night to take that picture a few years ago because they don't bloom until nighttime. But you can see there's actually some little beetles down there. But one time I asked my students, I said, what do you think pollinates nighttime blooming flowers? And this one boy goes, owls. No, owls. So it would be usually it's moths. And if you're out in Arizona, if you've ever seen the saguaro cactus, they bloom at night. They are pollinated by bats, and the bat's head is exactly the right shape to go into that flower. It's pretty cool. Okay, now plants are able to communicate with their pollinators. All of you I know have seen Japanese honeysuckle. And the first day, for some reason, these have pink buds, but usually they're white. The first day they open, they're white. This is a signal to the pollinators, I'm ready to be pollinated. Okay, so after they're visited, you can see that the stamens are up like this. After they're pollinated, the next day the stamens will droop down and they turn color, they turn yellow. So when they're yellow, that means that's their way of telling the pollinators, you don't have to come back to me. I've already been pollinated. However, we can still drink the nectar out of them if you like to suck on honeysuckles. Another one is lantana. So certain kinds of lantana start out yellow, then they turn orange, and then the flowers turn pink. So they actually change color. Clover, if you've got clover in your yard, you ought to watch this. It's kind of interesting. The top right flower has not been pollinated yet. You can see a bee on this middle flower. And if you look, some of those flowers have dropped down. So what happens is after they're pollinated, that flower closes up, it drops down, and you can see that it changes color. And so the bottom flower has been completely pollinated. That one will make the seeds and make more clover in the yard. Okay, so I told you about maroon colored flowers, maroon and brown flowers. They attract flies and beetles. Um, they don't always smell like a dead animal, but some of them smell like vinegar. They might just have kind of a weird smell to them. So sweet shrub is one that we have in the Smokies. I don't know if it's up on the Cumberland Plateau. I think it is. Yeah, it is. It's on the Cumberland Plateau too. Um, the leaves have a good smell, but the flowers don't. And you notice it's got a second name called Bubby Bush. And where that name came from was when the old mountain ladies would only take a shower or a bath once a week. So you can imagine by the end of the week, they got a little ripe. So they would take the leaves of this and crush it up and put it down in their dress to make them smell a little bit better. Um, so these flowers stink. And this, my husband and I went to Alaska for our 24 and a half year anniversary because I didn't want to go in December. So we went in June. And I was telling Mitchell before we got on the air, every time we go someplace new, I always buy a wildflower book. So I bought a wildflower book about Alaska, and I always try to see what might be blooming, and I always try to find ones that would be really interesting. So I saw the chocolate lily, and I thought, oh, that's going to be my target plant. I want to see the target plant. So when we got there, believe it or not, they were having a heat wave. So it was in the lower 90s when we were in southern Alaska. And so we went to this national forest and went to the office, and I said, do you all have chocolate lilies here? And they said, yeah, there's some up on the Skyline Trail. Well, what they failed to tell us was the Skyline Trail was like this. It went straight up the mountain. So we are actually pulling ourselves up on trees to get up this trail and hoping that we didn't meet any bears or moose. So we finally get this one area that flattened out, and I could see the grass was all mashed down off the side. And I thought, well, there must be something over there people wanted to see if the grass is mashed down. Get over there, and there's a chocolate lily, and it was faded. And I was so disappointed. So we were going to stay with one of my cousins who I barely knew because they live in Alaska. And so we got to their house and we were filthy because of the dust. And so we get to their house and I said, I'm so sorry to meet you like this. But I said, I wanted to see a chocolate lily. We were up on the Skyline Trail. And they said, that is one of the steepest trails in southern Alaska. 2,000-foot elevation gain in 3/4 of a mile. So, I mean, it was really, really steep. And I said, well, I wanted to see a chocolate lily. And my cousin goes, oh, we have those in our neighborhood. And so they took us for a walk and we get down by the Kenai River. And I went, there's a chocolate lily. That's that picture. So on my Alaska gallery on my website, that's the first picture you see. Because I said, I've never worked so hard in my life to see a wildflower. And so I thought, well, I want to see what this smells like. Big mistake. I took a big sniff. Notice the next thing, what it's called, the outhouse lily. That gives you a hint. It smells like poop. So it attracts flies as their pollinators. And this is one that we have in the Smokies, and actually we have it here in Oak Ridge too. Sometimes you'll be walking down the trail and you think, oh God, must be a dead animal someplace around here. And start looking, oh no, it's not a dead animal, it's carrion flower. So that the name will give you a pretty good hint about what it smells like. Now, this is a plant we call a dioecious. Talked about monoecious a while ago with the ragweed. It's got the male flowers on one part of the plant and the female on another part of the same plant. Dioecious flowers or plants have it's either a female plant or a male plant. So the top one here is the female. These are the pistils, and you can see the anthers on the one on the bottom. So when a fly lands on there and gets the pollen from the male flowers, then it thinks, oh, there's a dead animal over here. I'm going to get on that one on the female. And so they both smell bad. But that's how the pollen is spread. Then we have Jack in the Pulpit. This is another dioecious plant. That's either female or male. Usually, if it's a male, it's only going to have one leaf. Um, and one thing that's interesting about them is that they can change from a male to a female later on, the next year or so. So it takes a lot more energy to make uh, berries or fruit than it does pollen. So your younger plants are usually going to be males. Um, and if you open them up and look down inside of them, and I'll do this in a minute, I'll show you, you'll see little, kind of like little maroon colored knobs. So there's certain little flies that and fungus gnats that go down there and they pollinate these. The female flower usually has two leaves. Um, so here's what the male flower looks like if you open it up. So the jack is the spadix, and the spadix is what has the male flowers at the bottom of it. Okay. The hood is called a space. Um, so they're in the arum family, and you can see the little flower fly on the side there. So if you really want to get up close and personal, this is what the female looks like. Okay, so you can tell that these will become the berries. So the white part is the pistil, and the green part is the ovary. So if these do get pollinated, they will turn into this. And this is what we start seeing this time of the year. Okay. Um, and then this is Pachysandra. So Pachy means thick, and Andra is the anthers. So this one you can see the female flowers are the pink ones, and then the anthers are the male flowers are the white ones. And then we have some that are kind of tricky. Um, this is the common day flower, and Linnaeus, came up with the binomial nomenclature. So Comelina communis, Comelina, it was actually named for three Dutch botanist brothers. Two of them lived to become famous botanists. The third one died when he was young. So back behind there, you can't, it's almost transparent. There is a third petal that you can't see. And that was the third brother that died. Um, so if you ever see day flowers, be sure and look at them up real closely. Another thing that's interesting about this is that this has false anthers. The ones that you see up at the top, I'm trying to point on my computer, I'm sorry. The ones that are up at the top are false. The ones that are down at the bottom are the true anthers. So those are the ones that have the pollen on it. Um, if you've ever seen wild hydrangeas, it's got a whole bunch of little teeny tiny flowers in the middle, and the white ones that you see around the edges are sterile flowers. They don't have any pollen in them. But if you've got hydrangeas in your yard, those are always big and colorful. Those are bred to have only the showy flowers. So you probably won't have any of the little seed producing flowers in them. Okay, and then these are orchids. So I'm going to have my bee again, and she's going to fly into that hole that you see. So the lady slipper orchids are tricky because they're kind of like a maze. They trap the bee for a little while so that she has to hit the pollinia to get the pollinia on her, and then she flies to the next flower. So she's going to enter there, and then she's going to get caught in there and stay in there for a while. And then when she exits, she'll get the pollen on her and go to the next flower. There is one orchid that I would love to see, but it's somewhere in Europe. But it looks like it looks and smells like a female wasp. And when the male wasp tries to mate with it, he gets pollen on him. And when he flies to the next flower, because he's not smart enough to know that it's not another female wasp, he pollinates it. So, Mitchell, I've still got a few more to go. It's 8 o'clock. Do you want to keep going?
Absolutely. Keep going.
Okay. Okay, I've got a few more to go. Okay, so composite flowers. If you look at this, trick question, how many flowers do you see there? Hundreds. All right. So composite flowers often have what we call ray flowers, which are the petals, and then they have disc flowers, which are the ones up at the top. They always bloom from the outside in. So you can see where it says pistils. The first flowers that came out, first part was the male flowers. Then the female flowers bloom. So it blooms male, 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 and then the female ones will bloom. So in the case of a sunflower, same thing. Your bee is going to land on the outside. She's going to walk in a spiral. Okay. So the outside flowers are going to be have the pistils on them. She's going to have pollen from the last flower that she went on, because that's the last flowers that were blooming. And so as she walks around, she pollinates all of those little flowers. Every one of those can make a seed. So if you have sunflowers in your yard, you're going to have a bunch of seeds if they all get pollinated. Okay, remember I told you about the beetles being dumb? Okay, so they have to come to a flower like this, a bowl-shaped flower, or something like Queen Anne's lace that's flat with a whole bunch of little flowers on it. I'm sure most of us have dogwoods. What a lot of people don't realize is that the white things are not petals. The true flowers are in the middle. And so when you see the little picture in the lower right-hand corner, those are the flowers. Okay, and they actually have 4 little petals, and they've got 4 anthers. Those are what now we have the seeds. So if they do get pollinated, those are what are going to make the red seeds. And those seeds turn red to get the attention of birds. Okay, so birds have to swallow those seeds in order to soften them up enough, soften the seed coat up enough so that they can germinate and become a tree. I always had fun with my students. I said, when you see a white dogwood out in the woods, that was planted by a bird. How do you think they planted them? Of course, they'll say they stuck them in the ground with their beak. I said, nope. They planted it another way. And then the kids will finally figure it out, Of course, you know how little boys are, they love that. And then we have tube-shaped flowers. And these have to be pollinated by a pollinator with a long mouth part. So bees, bumblebees, hummingbirds, butterflies, moths, they all have a long mouth part that's able to get down into those flowers. So you can see that picture on the top is Blazing Star, and that skipper has her mouth part down inside that flower. And then we have little brown jugs that live on the ground. Do y'all have those in Middle Tennessee? They're actually an evergreen. Those leaves stay on all year. But the flowers are right on the ground. You have to get really low to see them. These are pollinated by a fungus gnat. And the way the seeds get spread is really interesting, because the seeds have a gelatinous coating on them. And I guess it's kind of sweet. Ants will get those seeds and they take it back to their nest. They chew off that gelatinous coating and the seeds are left behind. And that's how those seeds get spread. So it's pretty cool. And then we have gullet-shaped flowers. The one on the top is my worst enemy. It's all over my yard. That ground ivy. It's in the mint family, and it takes over. But this is also going to be has to be usually a large-bodied insect like bumblebees that can get down into the pink turtle head or into the monkey flower, because they've got to be able to push that down to get down into the flower. And then we have plants in the pea family, and a lot of them will look like this. This is that clammy locust that blooms in the spring. They have 3 different kinds of petals. The top one is called the standard, and you can see the yellow dot. That's that nectar guide I was telling you about. Okay, that's the one that usually sticks up. On the side, on the bottom, is the keel, and the keel is going to hold the pistils and the stamens. Okay, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Then we have the wings, and the wings have to be opened up so that the bee can get down into where the keel is, where the reproductive parts are. So, like I said, it takes a pretty intelligent insect like a bee or a bumblebee to do that. And here, this one's upside down compared to what the flowers you just saw. So the bee lands on that standard where the nectar guide was. You can see how those wings opened up, and then where the keel is coming down, you can actually see the stamens hitting her thorax. So this is funny. This is called butterfly pea, and you can actually make a tea out of these petals. And at science camp a couple of years ago, I told the kids, I said, I'm going to make butterfly pea tea. Well, they thought I said PEE and not PEA. And so they were pretty mortified that we were going to have butterfly pea. But I said, no, it's PEA, that kind of PT. Maple trees. So the pictures on the left are what are going to become the little helicopters. The true name for that is Samara. So if you look closely, you can actually see the pistil sticking up. Each pistil is connected to one of those seeds. So the seeds are always connected to each other. The helicopters are. The ones on the right are the male flowers. And guys, I hate to pick on you, but males are expendable. So once they've done their thing, they fall off. So this is what's so messy. If you've got pine trees or oak trees, you see all those things on the ground. That's the male flowers. Have y'all ever seen Indian pipes? A lot of people think they're mushrooms. They think it's a fungus. This is actually a wildflower, and they are what we call a saprophyte. You see, there's no green in it, so they can't make their own food. There's no chlorophyll. So what they have to do is they have to break down twigs and leaves in the soil. So they're pretty interesting. And then this one I call daughter I call it the vampire vine, because if you see on that bottom picture, you can see like little teeth. So what happens is when these sprout from the ground, the seed sprouts, it will move around until that vine touches a host plant. Then it spirals around it. Those teeth sink into the host plant, and it becomes an obligate parasite. So it actually severs from its root, and it becomes part of that plant. It's a really bad plant to get in your garden, because if you want to get rid of it, you have to pull up the whole plant. It does bloom. It's in the morning glory family, and so they make a lot of seeds. I'm sorry, my nose is itching. That must be ragweed. And we're almost done now. This is squaw root. Now they call it cancer root or bear corn. I call it bear's X-lax, because when bears go into hibernation, they eat twigs and leaves to clog themselves up, because they don't want to go to the bathroom while they're sleeping. So when they come out of hibernation, they really need to get rid of that. So they will eat this squaw root, bear corn, and it will clean them out. So that's why I call it bear. This is actually another parasite, and it grows on oak tree roots. It doesn't hurt the tree, and this is another one that we find in the Smokies. It's a real pretty one, but it will grow on the roots of plants. And that is it. We're done. We're done. So does anybody have any questions?
Before we get into the
Well,
questions, let me mention to the group that I apologize for our early start. We went through a few startup issues and got going before start time. And so, for those of you who may have joined at the advertised time and missed part of the presentation, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel next week. We should have this whole video there, and you will be able to see any of the parts that you missed. So again, we apologize for the early start, but we've had a great presentation. I'm just glad that we're not going to have a test immediately after, because there's so many facts to have remembered. I think I wouldn't do very well. So I'll open it up now for questions. So if you have a question, please unmute and proceed.
well, I appreciate you all joining us. And one reason we had to have a early start for you is because it was a late start for me. Uh, I'm in the Eastern time zone. So your 6 o'clock is my 7. Um, but I've enjoyed doing this for you. I give this program quite often, and I always enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
So Kris, we have a couple of questions that have come in on the chat. One
Okay.
is, when ants spread bloodroot, is that a form of pollination?
I don't know that ants go on bloodroot. Now that okay, I think they carry the seeds.
That's exactly
I've
right.
heard that they carry. No, that is not a type of pollination because it's already been pollinated, so they have the seeds. So the seeds would have been made in the spring. They would have been formed in the spring, and then they have to develop all throughout the year. And then later on, when the seeds form, they do have that, and there's a name for that, and I cannot think of it right now, what that gelatinous coating is. But yeah, so they do carry that, but it's not pollination. The pollination is when the pollen was carried from the stamens to the pistils.
Very good. I see that we had a comment from Toby Kuzman. Toby,
Yeah.
if you don't mind unmuting and go ahead and discuss what you put into the chat there.
Okay.
Hi.
Can you hear me? I've never
Yes, I
done.
can.
Okay, good. So, my understanding is that Indian pipe is now considered a mycoheterotroph, not a saprophyte.
Oh, okay.
So
Well,
it's
that's what makes
using
science fun
using a
and change the
mycorrhizal
rule.
fungus. Yeah,
Okay, okay. So that's what breaks down
yeah,
the twigs. Yeah, that makes sense. Well,
yeah. And there's
as
a
we
whole. I also mentioned in that comment, there's the last episode of the In Defense of Plants podcast is all about monotropy.
oh,
And it's a really
okay.
interesting interview with an expert about it's about cryptic diversity in Monotropa uniflora, I think.
Yeah.
But
That
yeah,
I meant to mention what that the scientific name means is pretty interesting. It means one flower, one turn. So it blooms down, and then after it's pollinated, it turns up. So um, some of the scientific names are pretty interesting because a lot of them have a meaning to them.
So Toby, thank you for jumping in there. You did a
Yeah.
much better job of pronouncing those names and explaining that than I ever could. So thank you.
Okay. Tell me again what that was. A
okay, it's called
mycoheterotroph.
mycoheterotroph means that it feeds on uh, it's parasitic on fungus or feeds on fungus. In this case, it feeds on mycorrhizal fungus, so it's actually getting its nutrients from a plant through the fungus.
Okay. Okay. So I'll have to change that.
So
Um.
some of our parasitic orchids are like that, like Coralleria and you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's why I always say, do not dig up lady slippers.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Toby, I recognize your name from Facebook.
Yeah, me.
Yeah, I always appreciate you're on What's Blooming, I think, aren't you?
Yes, yes, I
Yeah,
am.
yeah, yeah,
I recognize
yeah.
you from that too, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
I've
going to
made a lot of
mention,
friends through that. It's been a good group.
Uh-huh.
One thing I like about that group is that people don't jump down your throat if you misidentify something, because
Well,
some
that's
some
something I like about botany people in general. It's like because there's so much diversity where we live, nobody knows, even the experts don't know everything.
yeah. Well, and
Mm.
I'm not an expert by any means. I call myself a backyard botanist because when I was in college, I just got to take one half of a botany course, and it started with algae. That's how long ago it was. So it was algae through ferns. So I didn't even get into the second time. I just took it for fun. 'Cause my degree's in microbiology. But I liked plants, and so I really didn't seriously get into this until about 1984. Um, so I haven't had a chance to really study it in depth. So, but I just love it. But I appreciate your input. Thank you, Toby.
Sure. And thank you for the
so
Oh, you're welcome. I
we
enjoyed
have a
it.
number of comments here. Very interesting presentations, informative and fun. Another person says, I enjoyed it so much and learned some fascinating things. Another says, thanks, Kris. Really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Always enjoy your presentations, Kris. This is Terry Joyce.
Oh, hey, Terry. Okay, I haven't been able to see who all is on here. Thank you. Well, one of the best things that everybody can do is whatever you do, remember, pass it on to other people because I learned a lot from different like park rangers and botanists that I've gone on hikes with, uh, and of course books that I've read. But it's important, especially with children, to pass these things on because our generation is really interested in this kind of thing, but children need to learn these kind of things because they're inside so much. They're not getting out much. They're on the screens all the time. And so and that's what I'm trying to do with my grandson, is to teach him some of these things so that he'll remember it and carry it on. So if you all can do that kind of thing, that would really be great.
I
Hi,
keep all
Johnny.
your pictures on in my notes. So if I'm out, I don't have to carry my wildflower book. I've got a note list with Kris's pictures. So it really helps me. I do a lot of presentations for our master gardeners and self-taught. I just got interested in it years ago and I've really enjoyed it. We have a place in Smoky, so I get to go up there a lot and see a lot of things. A lot of cardinal flower this weekend.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. That is so pretty. Um, yeah, I haven't had a chance to get out much. I need to, but yeah. Any more questions? Well, I thank you all for coming on. I appreciate you listening. I didn't mean to run on so long, but there's just so many things to share. Um,
So, Kris,
that's one of
thank
my
you.
problems. I talk too much, but
Thank you very much for the presentation. As I mentioned, we will be putting the whole presentation on YouTube. Probably by the end of next week, it should be there. In the meantime, if you want to send me a copy of the presentation, we can make that available through a shared resource as well. So, been very informational. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. And unless there are other questions, we will go ahead and end the presentation.
well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Kris.
Okay, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. Good night.
Good night, everyone.